I can see very high.
It's a new day on the Enterprise, and we're looking at a planet. The place is new to us, but not to humans, as Teranova here was the first colony we founded outside of our own solar system. We're going to pop over there for a look in the Enterprise, as 70 years ago, Earth lost contact with them. Earth wanted to send more colonists a few years after the initial landing, once they'd proven it was viable, but the first wave of colonists resisted the idea. Some harsh words were exchanged, then the colony simply stopped responding. As it was an 18-year round trip back then, popping over to check if they'd all died was considered unviable. We arrive at the planet and give the settlement a call, but receive no response. A quick scan shows the colony still exists, but has no life signs, which might be connected to the moderately unpleasant background radiation. We'll be safe for a few hours, though, so down we pop for a proper look. The place is showing signs of wear and weathering, though none of conflict. Whatever happened, it probably wasn't an attack. Archer has Travis track down and check their communication system to see if the previous owners left any records. While Reed has a scout to make sure we're safe, T'Pol's figured the radiation is just a fraction of what it would have been 70 years back when we lost contact. As to what caused it, we've no idea. Perhaps we could ask the local that Reed's just seen on his walk. Whoever it was didn't fancy a chat and has buggered off into a cave. Starfleet doesn't let a little thing like that stop them, though, so suitably equipped and armed, in go Archer and Reed after them. They eventually come across an area that's obviously inhabited based on the animal skins, candles, food, tools, and faces of people who live there. One appears on our level with something that looks suspiciously gun-shaped. Reed doesn't wait to see if it is and poops some red at the bugger instead. A slight problem, all the others have disappeared. Bigger problem, they've reappeared with what are now definitely confirmed to be guns, as they're spitting bullets at us. Archer and Reed scarper and, after a bit of guidance from T'Pol, make it back to a hole they crawled through earlier. Archer makes it out, but Reed takes a round to the leg and is captured. He's gone by the time Archer has turned around, and some ricochets persuade him it's probably time to leave. That's a smart choice for all of us, in fact. A stranger leaving the cave attacks Travis and gets some red poop from T'Pol as a result. Archer's the next out and orders us all to leg it. Back to the shuttle we go and take off, all while Travis is saying we should go back and rescue Reed from the aliens. Except they're not aliens, says T'Pol. It looks like we found the descendants of our missing colonists. Tucker's scanned the caves and picked up around 50 life signs. He's also identified which one is Reed. There's no response to calls, but at least he's still alive. This may only be the 22nd century, but it's still Starfleet, and that means when shit goes south, we have a meeting. The cave network is extensive, says Tucker, and T'Pol suggests they may have started living in them because of whatever caused the radiation nearly a century ago. Oh, and we can't teleport Reed out because of the rock, which is probably just as well given what happened to the last poor bastard who went through it. Everybody's talking about a rescue plan until Archer cuts them off. These are humans we're dealing with, and he wants to take a softly approach. To that end, he's going back with Phlox while everybody else works on trying to figure shit out. Immediately surrendering is Archer's new plan once we get there. He shouts that he simply wants to talk, and two lads with guns appear to lead them away. We're taken to Reed, so that's promising. What's more promising is that the people here still speak English. Well, mostly. This William Wallace-looking bugger seems to be in charge, as he's the first to talk. He guesses we're from Earth and came here in a sky ship, though assumes we're here to kill them. Archer's assurances that he's wrong don't go anywhere, but William Wallace is at least willing to let us leave as long as it's permanent. Reed needs treating first, which also gives Archer a chance to find out what happened. Long story short, humans, which is something these people don't consider themselves to be, by the way, shat poison rain on the colony. A woman next to William says she was just a kid when it happened, back when they lived above ground, and all the grown-ups carked it as a result. The surviving children came to live in the caves. Archer tries to convince them it wasn't humans who did this, and that they're human as well, but a youngster calls him a liar. Phlox has finished checking Reed by this point and been scanning the others. He notes the woman, who Phlox guesses is actually William's mum, is unwell. Specifically, she has lung cancer, but this is the future, so we can cure it, if she comes to the ship. The kid calls this more lies, but William wants to give it a go, as long as Reed stays here. To the ship we go, where William's mum doesn't much care for being in a scanner. Phlox finishes up and starts preparing her treatment, which handily gives Archer a chance to bring up some files on the original colony group. He tries again to explain that we're all the same species, but William's not interested. It's all bollocks as far as he's concerned, and he tells Archer to stop. William's mum, on the other hand, doesn't seem so sure. T'Pol's found what caused the mystery radiation. An asteroid carrying science bollocks hit the planet to the north of our colony, the resulting radioactive cloud travelling south. Hoshi's had luck too, and we've now got the last message the colony tried to send. The former captain of the colony ship seemed convinced they were attacked as a result of their disagreement with Earth, believing we'd decided to destroy the first colony so more could land. The radiation was killing off the adults, but kids were more resistant because reasons, and moved into the caves. Debris from the impact meant the message never made it to Earth, but it certainly explains why the descendants of those surviving children now hate humans. Time for some good news. William's mum has been cured of cancer. It comes with a dose of bad news too, as Phlox has found evidence that they're all getting slowly poisoned. He thinks it's the groundwater they're using, and there's no treatment. Neither William Wallace nor his mum believe us and refuse to leave their home. We're the monsters who killed their ancestors after all, and this could be a trick, though pointing out that Phlox just cured one of them helps a little. So do more pictures. Archer's found some of the colony before the impact, and seeing humans live there is confusing. Not as confusing as William's mum being told it's a picture of her at 5 years old, though. William's still not buying it, and when Archer's reminded what'll happen to Reed if shit goes south, he lets it go. He debates the topic with T'Pol instead, who lays out a possible plan for taking them by force. Archer recoils from the idea, saying we need to convince them to come back to Earth. That, thinks T'Pol, may not be what's best for them. They may be human, but they're also Novan. This planet is all they know, and we have no right to make the choice for them. The argument seems to work, and with Tucker, we identified that the radiation only affected the northern hemisphere. Half of the planet is perfectly safe for them, so Archer has Tucker locate a place with similar caves. He's explaining this to William Wallace and his mum on the way back to the planet, though he's not really getting anywhere with them. Matters aren't helped by a somewhat rough landing, which is a nice way of saying the ground gives way and the whole shuttle ends up in a tunnel. The good news is William recognizes where they are. The bad news is he wants Archer's weapon and doesn't share the reason why. Archer hands it over and off he goes with William and his mum, leaving Travis with the shuttle. The journey's derailed again by hearing someone calling for help. It's a lad at the bottom of a cavern, and his busted leg is trapped. William asks if Archer's willing to help save him, and Archer agrees to try. It doesn't take long for the inevitable slip by Archer and William grabbing hold, then we reach the chap to save him. It's Archer's turn to ask for trust this time, as he wants his pistol back. William hands it over, eventually, and Archer slices up the log. We arrive back at their camp with the lad in a makeshift splint. William's mum has seen enough to be convinced we're on the level now, and despite William himself trying to avoid it, she tells the gathered crowd what Archer said about the poison, the southern caves, and the colonists they're descended from. It's dinner time back on the Enterprise, and we're all talking about high-profile disappearances. At least one of them, Amelia Earhart, was kidnapped by space slavers and will be found in a couple of 100 years' time, but they don't know about it yet, despite that episode of Voyager having been broadcast 6 years before this one. They've answered their own mystery, though. Teranova has not only been solved by the crew of the Enterprise, it's also been saved by them as well, so we'll leave them to consider how the news will be received back home as we get ready to take another step on the long road. There's something about post-apocalypse scenarios that I find interesting. The exploration of how society survives, or doesn't, when the worst happens, is a large part of it. Books like A Canticle for Leibowitz fascinated me with their depictions of how the world might skew sideways and take our tenuous grasp on enlightenment with it. That interest serves as somewhat of a mixed blessing for today's story. On the one hand, it makes me appreciate the idea, this question of what happens if a group of preschoolers are left on their own for a few generations. On the other, it makes it all rather predictable, with a lack of any real invention or innovation on a well-trodden path. It's all been done before. Hell, you could argue it's been done by Star Trek itself. The episode Miri from the original series gave us a more entertaining twist on the idea of a society formed by children, and it did so nearly 40 years earlier to boot. It doesn't help that today's story has elements that don't really work if you give them too much thought. Take the timescale, for example. We're told the journey takes 9 years, and 5 years after they settled, we lost contact. So how does the colony ship captain think Earth is responsible? Even if they'd started arguing with Earth the very second they landed, it would have been another 4 years before a ship launched immediately got there. And we know Earth didn't have any sort of exploration ship in the area because Archer said checking on them after we lost contact would take the full 9 years. Based on the available data, it's physically impossible for humans to be the ones responsible for what they thought was an attack. The colony captain seems to suggest we might have convinced another species to attack on our behalf, implying it could even have been the Vulcans, but that assumes we're super friendly with other species to the point we can ask them for an atrocity as a favor, not particularly likely. If we're generous, we can possibly dismiss all of this as the rantings of a man crazed with both grief and radiation poisoning. I think it's fair to suggest the lad wouldn't have been 100% thinking straight, but it's still rather unsatisfying. It also relies on a colony that can make multiple light-year phone calls to have no sort of orbital scanning ability whatsoever. While we're throwing stones, I don't think the vocabulary works either. I'm not talking about the idea that much of it would be rock-oriented, as that makes an element of sense for a cave-based society. The issue is that their entire language would be based on whatever was remembered by 4- and 5-year-olds. Are we really saying a preschooler knew what shale is, or that no new words were created over 70 years to bridge the gaps? Even if we say those kids were able to learn from media left behind in the dead colony, that gives us the opposite problem of knowing specifics but not basics. They used the media to teach themselves different geological terms, yet still say go-befores and overside. I don't buy it. I'm all for representing divergent languages, but if you're going to do it, you need to give me a reason beyond it sounded good in the script. That's quite a lot of negativity from me, so I think it's worth clarifying that I don't hate the episode. Quite aside from my own interest in post-apocalypse stuff, the premise itself is a good one. We spent so long watching the Federation be successful, an organization often considered synonymous with humans, that failure is rarely considered. The idea that our first deep space colony would be a catastrophe and mired in political controversy to boot is a striking counterpoint. It also helps reinforce that our species really is just fumbling around like the interstellar toddlers we are. The idea, then, is good, and I've already said I don't hate the episode, so does that mean I like it? Dear sweet merciful prophets, no, it's tolerable at best, or just plain boring at worst, and that's a judgment from someone who already has more reason to be invested than most. I don't think it's a stinker, but it's still very much on the skip list if you're rewatching. We don't like to end on negatives here, though, so let's sift the tea leaves and see what else can be found. For a start, we get our first mention of what species Dr. Phlox is. He identifies himself as Denobulin, a species we've never heard of prior to this. We could probably have a discussion here about how one of the first species humans encounter drops off the radar afterwards, but that's the prequel paradox for you. If it's a choice between nothing new or having the odd mystery disappearance, I'll take the mysteries every time. Space is a big place after all. Let's end with T'Pol's behavior when discussing the possibility of a relocation with Archer. Was her suggestion of stun grenades and taking them by force simply a fact-based answer to a question, or was she testing him, seeing how far he'll go along a chosen path before reconsidering? Her switch to arguing his course of action is detrimental to them suggests a test, perhaps to see if he'd be receptive to her case for their right to self-determination. And that reopens a possibility we've heard before. Tucker was of the opinion that T'Pol was here as a spy, with the more tactful term being chaperone. Her actions hint that the truth may lie somewhere between those 2 points, with T'Pol acting as an observer not only of us, but of our entire outlook while exploring. But surely that goes against the very principles of non-interference the Vulcans themselves have professed. Why, such behaviour would paint them as the sort of people who go around spying on others, and that can't possibly be true, can it? End of episode.
I've had a word with my new pet down on the lower decks.
Hold on, you've had a word with what now?
Oh, I mean the guy who thinks I'm a rock monster. He's actually quite agreeable as long as he thinks he's in mortal danger.
I'd be careful with that if I were you. Humans have a tendency to be a bit unreliable when terrified.
It's all good. One of the first things I did when he gave me computer access was make sure the doctor was juicing him up with hallucinogens.
And the doctor was fine with this, was he?
Actually, he doubled the dose, said it would make for a good experiment.
I like him already. Anywho, you were saying?
I had a word with my pet and he told me about the dog. Apparently he belongs to the captain.
Oh, bollocks, he's already inserted himself into a position of influence. We'd best assume he's the power behind the throne.
So where does that leave us? We can't hide through all 4 seasons.
Our first job is to figure out if he's agreeable to sharing power.
And if he's not, what's the backup plan?
If he can't be reasoned with, there's only one thing for it.
We'll have to lead a mutiny. Oof.